Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, How to Select, Print, and Encode RFID Tags. 2 housekeeping points before we get started. The session is being recorded, and you will receive a link over the next few days by email. Secondly, please submit your questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A section, and we will be addressing these towards the end of the webinar. Barcodes Group is a leading provider of barcode, mobile computing, and RFID solutions. Our solution platforms bring together hardware, software, supplies, and support. With RFID now delivering inventory accuracy verification in the high 90s, the number of RFID tags sold is experiencing a double-digit growth each year. And to discuss how to select, print, and encode RFID tags, we couldn't ask for 2 better speakers to explore this topic with you. Carlo, Emanuele, is the Vice President and General Manager of our Consumables business at Barcodes Group. Carlo most recently served as Executive Vice President and General Manager at LineDrive, a nationwide industrial manufacturing and go-to-market consultancy. Prior to LineDrive, Carlo spent over 8 years at Brady Corporation, a leading product and safety identification company. In his last role at Brady, Carlo led the facility and safety identification businesses. Chris Brown is the RFID subject matter expert at TSC Printronix Auto ID, a company fully committed to the growth of RAIN RFID. After spending 20 years in Europe as an EMEA general manager in the barcode labeling software market, Chris moved back to America in 2017 and joined TSC Printronix. He is responsible for ensuring that TSC Printronix RFID printers support the latest commands, functionalities, and tag constructions for the rapidly evolving RFID market. Chris is an active participant in GS1, AIM, and the RAIN RFID Alliance, participating in multiple work groups that are focused on the basic but complex question of what should people encode to their tags. Thanks for joining us today, Carlo and Chris. Carlo, please take it away.
Thank you, Edwin. To get us started, Edwin, can you please launch the poll questions, please? All right, while folks are submitting your answers, let's just take a step back quickly and talk about what we're going to discuss today. As many of you know, RFID is a very big topic. So really, we're going to start with, so why is it taking off so dramatically right now? What value drivers are really creating that? Chris will do a wonderful job of digging in depth on encoding and numbering systems. And then I will really close this out with, after some of the complexity that you hear around RFID, the need for it and how to implement it, I'll discuss a little bit how Barcodes Group really makes it easy to evaluate what the need is in your particular organization, how we can help define solutions, and then ultimately make it easy to implement. Before moving on, I think it'd be a great time to take a look at what the actual poll results are. These are interesting and pretty much in line with what we are seeing. So I'm assuming everybody can see some of the answers here, is that really a lot of the market is at the point where it's, I understand the needs that I have, and RFID is of great interest, but we're really at this stage of trying to learn how it can add value to our business specifically. So I think this is a really great topic for our call today, and I hope you get some value out of it. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned in the agenda, why is RFID the interest spiking now? And simply put, the need has always been there. It's just grown exponentially for some very specific reasons. There is a total lack of supply chain visibility, and I could quote you different stats all day. There's some on the screen here. There are billions of lost revenue simply due to leakage alone, and that's across many different kinds of industries. And there has been market dynamics occurring prior to COVID, but what COVID did really accelerated it in different ways. And there's a shift in the workforce and a dramatic shift in simply how consumers spend. And what that has created is an environment where there's an increased demand for warehouse space and optimization, and a decrease in warehouse workforce. All that's to say, there is a need, and a dramatic need in the marketplace right now, to increase productivity. Next slide, please. So to take it a step further, I talked a little bit about what's driving the need. Well, let's discuss briefly, how does RFID actually capture that? And what has changed from maybe 8 to 10 years ago when RFID really became a hot topic back then? One of the bigger differences to start off with is there are solutions providers like Barcodes Group who really have the expertise not only to partner with great hardware companies, proprietary software, but more than anything else, really come in and help understand customers' distinct needs, where their pain is, and ultimately help them walk them through how to implement it successfully. Next, and this isn't to be underestimated as either, especially a difference from 8 to 10 years ago, is costs have come down in the RFID space in general. And what that has created, obviously, is an environment where the return on investment is greater and comes faster. And third, a lot of you have heard of the Walmart mandate, I'm sure, but they're not the only retailer. And some of the big box brands that you're well aware of are creating mandates for RFID specifically, which has really pushed this trend forward even further. So with that, if you want to go to the next slide, Edwin. Okay, so that's a nice little intro, but how does RFID specifically and the technologies drive value? Now, historically, and it's still a viable solution, a very viable solution, is that barcode scanners and labels is what's been most widely adopted, and that'll likely continue for quite a long time. But what RFID system and tags have allowed for is a couple things that I want to speak to now. One is greater efficiency and automation. If you look at one of the bigger differences, RFID really enables the ability to scan a large number of tags simultaneously versus what a lot of us are used to, which is one at a time. Next is accuracy and greater visibility. So a few examples: scan items inside a box or hidden from view, easily updated printed tags with new information. That's a really important piece. You're not printing new tags, taking them down, putting them back up. You're allowed to update it. Also, RFID is very difficult to copy because chips contain a unique identifying number. So really, again, to summarize it, is the RFID capabilities are far greater to solve some of the challenges that we discussed earlier. Now what I would like to do is pass it over to Chris so he can really get in depth and detail about how the RFID solutions actually work in practice. Chris?
Okay, thank you, Carlo, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. I'm going to talk a little bit about a fundamental question that you hopefully should have, and that question is, what should I encode to my tags? It may sound like a simple question, but it's actually very complex. If you're familiar with RFID tags or labels, they are really just a blank slate of memory, and consequently, you can encode pretty much anything you want to them. Many people get these RFID tags, labels, and they cook up their own serial number scheme, their own numbering system that they're going to encode to the tags, and they think that that's a good idea, but beware, it is not a good idea. If you simply start encoding your own numbering system data, very soon you will either cause or be the recipient of what we call tag clutter. Some people call it tag pollution. Tag clutter is really two sub-problems. The first sub-problem we call acid rain, and that is where tags from another application start getting read by your application, picked up by your application. Let's use an example here. Let's say that I'm an RFID sales guy and I'm driving down the highway in my car and I sell RFID labels, and on the seat next to me I have a couple of boxes of thousands and thousands of RFID labels. And I'm going to drive through a tolling station, and that tolling station is an RFID system. And it's supposed to read only the tag that's on my windshield. It knows then which car this is and what the toll that should be applied. But in acid rain, that reader might accidentally, erroneously read one of the tags, the labels in the box that's on the seat next to me. That's just starting to happen. It can cause a few problems. In this case, the toll solution provider would suddenly see this unknown car of the wrong tag and not know how to decipher that. The other sub-problem we call rain flooding, and this is when there are too many tags in a reader's read zone for the reader to be able to process in some short amount of time that it has. If we stick to the same example where I'm in my car with all these tags in my box and I go through the tolling station, maybe the reader has 1.5 seconds and it has to sort through tens of thousands of tags to get the correct tag. The reader may not be able to sort through all of those tags in the short amount of time it has. So this problem of tag clutter, we've seen a few examples out in the real world, but as RFID grows, if we do not do proper tag encodings, then the problem of tag clutter is going to become a major problem. So we're asking here that you be a good RFID citizen and you turn to Barcodes group and you work with them to set up and apply a proper tag encoding. Next slide, please. Now, what are proper encodings? When I talk about you need to encode with a proper numbering system, what are those proper numbering systems? There are really two families of proper numbering systems or proper encodings. The first family would be the GS1 EPC tag data standard. This is commonly used for RFID in retail items such as the Walmart mandate, Target, Macy's, and so on. And also it's very commonly used for logistics RFID labels. The other big family of proper encodings is the ISO IEC. It's really a group of many different standards. So they have a specific standard for example, automotive parts. They have another one for airline baggage, another one for vehicle identification. Vehicle identification would be like with my automotive tolling system. And they have a new one that they call the RAIN CIN approach, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But the key message here is that two basic families of proper encodings exist out in the market. Next slide, please. When you start looking into RFID, and if you're starting to read these standards or talking to different people, you need to be aware. It is a minefield of different terminology. And this is one of the key functions that Barcodes Group fulfills. They know the different terminologies that people can use. Sometimes one document will use one term and a different document will use a totally different term for the same meaning. And sometimes they'll use the same terms to mean different things. So it's really a minefield out there, but this is what Barcodes Group can help you with, sorting out the different terminology. So don't try to go it alone. Call in the experts, for example, at Barcodes Group. Next slide, please. So I hope that you understand the basic concept that you should choose to use a proper numbering system. Don't go Wild West and just start encoding your tags. But now that you understand the basic importance of choosing a proper numbering system, which one should you select? Well, the first question is, have you been told or mandated to use a specific standard? If you look at the graphic at the bottom, that's a screenshot from one of Walmart's RFID playbooks. In this case, their particular playbook for home goods. And you can see highlighted in yellow there, they say, if you are encoding tags for us, for Walmart, they must be encoded using GS1's EPC tag data standard, specifically the SG1096 encoding scheme. That's nice when somebody mandates or tells you what you have to encode, because it answers all the questions for you. But if you have not been mandated to use a specific standard, then you need to go out and look if there is sort of a default or de facto standard out there that is getting used for your industry and application. Example would be automotive parts. There is no clear mandate, there is no law that says you must use this specific numbering system for automotive parts. But if you go and look in the industry, the automotive industry, almost everybody is using a specific ISO standard. And if you're in automotive parts, that's probably the standard you want to use as well. Now, many people are using RFID for closed loop solutions. Closed loop solution means that you are tagging your items and only you are reading your items. The entire solution is just for you. It's a proprietary solution. No trading partners involved, no logistics partners, transportation partners, and so on. It's all for you. RFID does allow encodings for these closed loop solutions, but if you're going to do that and you want to cook up your own numbering system, you can do that, but make sure to wrap up your own numbering system in a standard. There are standards out there, mostly from ISO, that are designed to be wrappers for your own proprietary numbering systems. I mentioned earlier the new RAIN CIN numbering system. That's exactly what this is designed for. And it's very easy to read the standards and to implement this. So this is really the ideal numbering system wrapper that you should use if you have a closed loop solution. I guess the final message there, I said it earlier, don't go Wild West. Follow a standard, or if you want to make your own standard, wrap it up in a standard wrapper. Next slide, please. This is an eyeful, and you will not be able to digest or process this graphic on the screen. But this is what Barcodes Group is for. If you come to them and during the process of trying to figure out which numbering system you should use, they will work through this decision tree with you. This is what they do. One of the things that they do. So they're going to take you through this process, very deliberate and very conscious, and you and they are going to end up with a clear, specific numbering system that you will be using. Next slide, please. Now, at this point, you supposedly have your numbering system selected, and you know what your application is. My application might be automotive windshield tags for automotive tolling, or my application might be airline baggage or retail item level tag. So whatever your application is, plus the encoding standard that you're going to use, this information allows you to select your RFID tags or labels. In concept, it's fairly simple, but in practice, there are a lot of details involved. It's difficult, And again, this is another function that Barcodes Group fulfills. So you would take this information to Barcodes Group, and they're going to help you select your proper RFID labels and tags. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Carlo to talk a little bit about that topic.
Thank you, Chris. So there's no complexity in that at all, right? There's a lot
Piece
of
of cake.
piece of cake. Really, the big message, though, is Barcodes Group is really set up to make this entire process easy. So just as an example about selecting the right RFID tags, there's a ton of technical complexity underneath, but really at the end of the day, it's about finding the appropriate size and the optimal read range. As an example, the longer the read range, it can cause some interference. On top of that is what is the asset that needs to be tagged and the environment that it's in. Having those kind of conversations is really where Barcodes Group can help determine what solution, at least as a starting point, is best for your organization. Next slide, please. Now, really, regardless of the environment, Barcodes has RFID tags for really every application. And what I would want the group on this discussion to really take away from this is we have solutions that have proven performance, optimal tag design, which includes the appropriate inlays. One of the most important things is we have a dedicated team, which not only is there to help from a label standpoint or a tag standpoint, it's also there to help with what is the optimal hardware. Is it a dock door solution, tunnel, mobile hardware, the software that needs to go on along with it to enable all of this, and the consumables that flow through. On top of that, guaranteed performance. We stand behind our partnerships. Next slide, please. As I stated previously, Barcodes has a professional services team to really make this process easy. The things that I really want to call out here is having the RFID expertise really is table stakes. So you saw that earlier. If you don't find ways and partners to navigate some of the complexity that's in this, the likelihood of it being a successful implementation falls apart pretty quickly. You know, obviously, our friends at TSC and Barcodes, we have a ton of expertise in this space. On top of that, though, we take a very consultative approach. We know your organization is unique, right? So it's really about understanding what are you trying to accomplish, where are your pain points and needs today, so that we can build a plan working with you on a flawless implementation. And on top of that, especially now in the current environment, is having a strong partner that can sell you and work with you on the product supply to enable your RFID solution, specifically the tag. Next slide, please. You know, really to wrap this portion of it up, when selecting a partner with RFID, it's really critical that you're working with a full solution provider. And for Barcodes, it's really turnkey. You have the devices, which I spoke to earlier. That's everything from dock door solutions to mobile hardware, proprietary software that enables it, high performance tags and supplies, and again, the service, wrapping the service around it to make sure your implementation is a success. Thank you. I will now pass it on to Edwin, and appreciate the time.
Well, thank you very much, Carlo and Chris, for your presentation. And right now we want to switch to Q&A and answer the questions you may have. While you're typing those in, we look forward to following up with you and to discuss how RFID can help your business. And if you would like to receive an evaluation to discuss how RFID can improve your company's inventory accuracy and efficiency, please send us an email or complete a schedule request on either of the listed websites. And now to the questions. I saw one come in, Chris and Carlo, that I thought was interesting because it's just a scenario. Somebody has an ambulance service with mobile items such as ventilators, stretchers, cardiac monitors. Now they'd like to know, like, okay, what ambulance and where are those items located? So how would you go about it? Like, what class would you use to encode your assets, and what are next steps to make that happen in a situation like that?
I can take that one. To me, this would be a closed loop solution. You basically want to track your assets. This would be a perfect scenario to use the new RAIN CIN encoding scheme. I think that's what you mean by class. Class in RFID generally has a different meaning, but that meaning is kind of dead. So you would probably want to use the RAIN CIN numbering system or encoding scheme. And with barcodes, you would put down there some unique item number, but you would also design the system so that if in the future you wanted to track things such as maintenance on a specific item, you would be able to do that as well. Maintenance on the RFID tag. And all that can be set up fairly easily with the RAIN CIN numbering system.
Nice. Similar one related to rolls of paper. So you can't really tag on the outside of a core. So if you place an RFID inside the core, will the readers be able to scan it through the roll of paper?
Okay. Now, ironically, a lot of the RFID stuff today comes from the paper industry, specifically in Finland. So they have a lot of experience with RFID tagging these massive rolls of paper. The answer there, from my perspective, hinges on selecting the right RFID tag. And there are RFID tags that are specifically for massive rolls of paper that can be read. And I've seen different ones. I've seen sort of a flag tag construction where you have the core, the label goes into the core, but the RFID portion sticks out. I've seen a flag tag that goes on the outside of the roll and the flag sticks out. And I've seen a new type that goes directly on the outside of the paper. But the answer here hinges on just selecting the right RFID tag that can be read. And because of RFID's history in the paper industry, yes, those tags exist.
And Chris, wouldn't you say for a lot of applications and environment, that tends to be the answer? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. That's a general one. I guess it's just kind of extra interesting because of the history of RFID and paper. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So RFID can be overwhelming. And the question here is, at which moment do you justify making the effort and getting to that higher inventory accuracy? So here's an example of somebody who wants to keep track of a little over 50 laptops. Do you do that with RFID, or is that maybe not enough to justify the implementation of a system like that?
Maybe I can just start and just speak to it from a business standpoint, and then Chris can layer in just the technical feasibility of it. Just in general, to me, it's less about the volume of inventory and more about the value of it. So it's hard to just answer that question as a yes or no there. That said, if out of the 50 laptops, you're losing 50% of them, 75, like if you have the business case creates itself through the value out the door. So I wouldn't immediately move away from that or not look at RFID simply because the unit volume is small. It's really the dollar value associated with it. Chris, I don't know if you have anything to add to that point in general.
Yeah, I guess to add to that would be, if the laptops are going to be contained in a specific location, then 50, yeah, RFID might make sense. But if those laptops are going to be exiting and entering that location, then you're going to need more sophisticated reading solutions, and 50 laptops probably would not justify the cost of those sophisticated reading solutions.
Now we have reached the bottom of the hour, but there are some questions left. So Carlo and Chris are able to continue answering those. If you have to leave us, please contact us if you'd like to discuss that for, how RFID fits in your situation, and have a good day. But we'll move on to a few more questions here. Talk about syncing RFID to POS systems.
Okay, is there a specific? Yes, it can be done.
Okay.
And it's done.
And that's
done regularly.
yeah, that was the question. Can you sync
Okay.
that? And the answer is yes.
And it's
So
done
then
a lot.
another, like an application, like can you embed RFID high performance tags to metallic items, pipes, car wheels, screwdrivers?
The answer again is yes. Now, metal is a very specific application because if it's the wrong tag, it will create interference. But again, which is the great part about RFID, but also the part that creates the complexity is the answer is typically yes. But it's really about having a partner who can come in and understand the exact application of what could interfere with a successful implementation of it. But generally speaking, metal, yes, it's a different kind of solution though. Again, Chris, did I miss anything on that one?
Just about the tag selection. And these days we have special tags for metal. So we generally have it covered.
Talk a little about temperature limitations. Maybe the warehouse is warm or cold. Any limitations there regarding temperature when you can use RFID tags?
Yeah, there's sort of 3 temperature ranges. This gets complicated. There are 3 different temperature ranges you need to consider. One temperature range, one is in which temperature range will you actually be reading the tags. Temperature range 2 is which temperature range does the RFID portion of the tag need to survive. And temperature range 3 is which temperature range do the physical tags themselves need to survive. And the answer is we can go up and up and up in terms of specialty tags, and we can get all the way up to, boy, I can't remember the upper and lower limits, but like -40 degrees up to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. We can cover those ranges with special tags, special chips, and special reading equipment. Your basic tag, I think, was like -20 Fahrenheit up to, or -20 Celsius up to 80 Celsius. Sort of a basic range. Yeah.
Yeah. So Carlo mentioned a little bit find the right balance between size and read range. Now, if you have very small items, your RFID tag needs to be very small. Is there what's like the smallest size, so you can kind of determine if you could even apply RFID to a really small item?
Carlo, I can take that one unless you want to take that one. Okay. Your basic RFID tag, small might be 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. That's getting very small. There is a brand new tag out there that I think is like 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. Your basic RFID tag is going to be 2 inches by 1/2 inch, something like that as a minimum size. But you can get smaller, including down to that approximately 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch.
And maybe the last one is related to, how you can reuse tags, or are there labels that can easily be removed in case, need to return to the vendor? What's the story there about labels being able to be maybe removed or possibly even being reused?
Obviously about the adhesive and the material. And Chris, you're on a good roll, so why don't you
Okay.
your expertise even further, buddy?
Okay, you can look at this as labels and some kind of a hard tag. And there are all kinds of hard tags out there that are designed to be attached to an object, and then that object gets consumed or used, and the tag gets taken off and reused on a new object. With labels, you get into the question of the adhesive. You can design RFID labels with adhesive so that it can be put on, taken off, and reused on an object. You also have to consider what you encode to the tags. You can keep re-encoding the data on the tags, but if at some point somebody permanently locks the data in the encoding, then you cannot reuse it. So yes, tags can be reused, but and there are scenarios where that gets done. but it's not that common.
Well, and with that, we've reached the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for attending and for your insightful questions. Appreciate the presentation, Carlo, Chris, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.